more about your family.
Such a program could not possibly pass the Turing test and could not be said to use language intelligently. Eliza was a light-hearted foray into a field which was full of difficulty, for remarkably, it would turn out that the human ability to understand spoken or written sentences was vastly more complex than solving calculus problems.
Even if you take a simple everyday sentence like, Mary saw the bicycle in the store window, she wanted it. It might refer to the bicycle, the store window, the store, and which it refers to depends not so much on English as on your knowledge of what people want and don't want. If I had said, she saw the bicycle through the store window, she looked at it longingly and pressed her nose up against it, that second it probably refers to the store window and not the bicycle. Now you have to bring in knowledge of human anatomy and the fact that people emotionally like to be near things that they want, even if they can't have them, and so forth.
They hadn't reckoned with ambiguity when they set out to use computers to translate languages.
A $500,000 supercalculator, most versatile electronic brain known, translates Russian into English. Instead of mathematical wizardry, a sentence in Russian is to be fed in...
One of the first non-numerical applications of computers, it was hyped as the solution to the Cold War obsession of keeping tabs on what the Russians were doing. Claims were made that the computer would replace most human translators.
At present, of course, you're just in the experimental stage. When you go in for full-scale production, what will the capacity be?
We should be able to do about, with a modern commercial computer, about 1 to 2 million words an hour. And this will be quite an adequate speed to cope with the whole output of the Soviet Union in just a few hours computer time a week.
When do you hope to be able to achieve this speed?
If our experiments go well, then perhaps within 5 years or so.
And finally, Mr. McDaniel, does this mean the end of human translators?
So yes for translators of scientific and technical material, but as regards poetry and novels, no, I don't think we'll ever replace the translators of that type of material.
Mr. McDaniel, thank you very much.
But despite the hype, it ran into deep trouble. This straightforward Russian passage poses no trouble for a human translator.
In the present paper, we propose using matrix Boolean algebra, and we describe some results which we have already obtained in this way.
But when it was given to a computer, this was all it could come up with.
In 0241, present genuine article writing clause, to be offered to be proposed, please suggest, for investigation, research, analysis, exploration, paper, essay, such so a sort of sort-time family gens gender, utilized to take advantage of matrix Boolean algebra and n to be described row series, result gotten in at in 224 on n, this direction trend order permit.
Humans all over the world, even though they have never met, even though they have different languages and traditions, share a vast amount of common knowledge. Knowledge of what human beings are and what they strive for, their goals and beliefs, their sensitivities and fears. Before they could translate or understand languages, computers would have to know these things, as people do. We are so good at using and understanding language that before computers came along, we never realized just how difficult the task was. Language is just full of ambiguity. What words mean depend on their context. Imagine the problems an alien from outer space would have understanding these newspaper headlines. What kind of pattern are the police looking for? Is this about breakfast food or Britain's Labour Party?
What we began to see is that the things that people think are hard are actually rather easy, and the things that people think are easy are very hard. We could do the calculus with just a few hundred pieces of program, but to learn language, to recognize faces, to walk, and to put your clothes on and do the kinds of things we expect every child to do, we still can't do with the robots and the AIs of 1990.
Once so promising, the fortunes of artificial intelligence now looked bleak indeed. In 1972, Hubert Dreyfus wrote a history cataloging the failures of AI called What Computers Can't Do. The same year in Britain, funding for projects like Freddie was cut off following a scathing report of AI's progress by Sir James Lighthill.
In no part of the field have the discoveries made produced the major impact that was promised.
I'm going to describe very briefly.
Minsky and his colleagues didn't give up. They set about working on machine learning and on how to represent knowledge in computers so that computers could use that knowledge to resolve ambiguity in language. One project did succeed. Terry Winograd's program, Schlurdlu, could use English intelligently, but there was a catch. The only subject you could discuss was a micro-world of simulated blocks.
Find the block which is taller than the one you are holding and put it into the box. In this case, it needs to do a whole set of things, one of which is figure out what is meant by words like one and it. We use those in normal everyday language in a way which has to be interpreted by looking at the context in which they appear. In this case, it types back out, by it, I assume you mean a block which is taller than the one I am holding, which is only one of several possible things I could have meant, and needed to use a set of rules of thumb about how people use words like that in order to decide, in this case, which one I intended.
Despite Winograd's achievements, people outside AI circles were not impressed. Some predicted that artificial intelligence was doomed. But AI would not die out. In the dark years ahead, this man, Edward Feigenbaum, would somewhat restore AI's fortune. He realized that while micro-worlds might not be very large, they might be large enough to be useful. He reasoned that the intelligence displayed by experts, scientists, doctors, specialists, might be as easy to capture, if not easier, than a world of simulated blocks. Feigenbaum started with the expertise chemists use when reading a mass spectrograph trace like this, and interpreting it as a three-dimensional structure like this. Feigenbaum and his colleagues captured the rules in a system called Dendrol. Now a computer program was expert in a small area of chemistry. Other so-called expert systems followed, like this one, which simulated how geologists find mineral deposits. All kinds of areas of medicine and science where the knowledge used was deep but very narrow succumbed to Feigenbaum's approach. Paradoxically, these admired specialties were easier for the computer to simulate. There was much less ambiguity, and they were not very large.
When you actually codify this knowledge and put it to work, it turns out that you can achieve expert behavior in useful but narrow areas with a few hundred pieces of knowledge, maybe a few thousand pieces of knowledge. Experts were often shocked and startled to find out that in the end it amounted to a few hundred rules. Is that all I learned? Is that what I'm doing every day? I'm really exercising just a few hundred rules? All of me that relates to this task can be canned in a few hundred rules?
But where a human expert knows many things outside his specialty, the same is not true of an expert system. Outside their field of knowledge, they are hopeless.
So you get a blood disease analysis program. It's brilliant at deciding which blood disease the patient has on the basis of a lot of objective tests, like the sugar in the blood, presumably, and the red cells and the white cells, and a lot of more complicated things. It will tell you what kind of, say, meningitis that is, and it will tell you with more reliability than your family doctor. Terrific. But if you ask it, what is a germ? It doesn't have the slightest idea. Or what is a patient? Or do people prefer to live or die? Then it breaks down. That's the brittleness.
There was an expert system which had to approve or not approve automobile loans. And it granted a loan to someone who put down that they had 20 years of experience on the same job, even though they also put down that they were only 19 years old. Another situation like that of brittleness that I saw firsthand on a system that was done in France for skin disease diagnosis. As a kind of joke, we told it about my 1980 Chevy. And it asked questions like, are there spots on the body? And he said yes. What color spots? Reddish brown. How old is the patient? 10 years old. And it eventually said the child has measles.
The brittleness of expert systems has been likened to the fascinating condition of idiosavantism. David is an idiosavant, a human being brilliantly gifted in one small area, but backward in every other sense.
What was the 17th of December, 1974?
It was a Tuesday.
The 10th of June, 1917.
It was a Sunday.
The 1st of March, 2044.
It'll be a Tuesday.
There aren't any calendars that far ahead, but it's again absolutely correct.
Can you tell me what 8 add on 7 is? If you take 8 and add 7 to it.
It'll make 14.
8 and 7's 14?
It is.
Okay, it's not, you don't think it's 50?